There are more wealthy people in Hong Kong than anywhere else in the world. However, it's also a city where 1 in 4 people live in poverty, where the elderly have to scrounge through trash to get by, and where hundreds of thousands of people are forced to live in cramped, cage-like homes. Years ago, Hong Kong embarked on an ambitious experiment to become a capitalistic haven, a place where market forces rule and money equals power, where everyone could succeed. But something went drastically wrong, leading to a society where wealth disparity is among the highest globally, an extreme housing crisis, and alarming levels of poverty. Hong Kong is officially the most expensive city to live in the world. Many of its residents live in conditions that are unimaginable for a city as affluent as Hong Kong. It has the least affordable housing globally, far exceeding already costly cities like New York, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. It would take over 20 years for an average citizen to save enough for an apartment if they didn't spend a dime of their income. Furthermore, those who rent spend over half of their income on housing, more than in any other city globally. Due to these circumstances, there has been a rise in cage homes. The official name for these dwellings is subdivided flats. They are typically standard Hong Kong apartments that have been divided, often illegally, into several tiny living spaces. To give you an idea, an average subdivided flat, or cage home, is smaller than a standard US parking space, with many being even smaller. While it may seem like this housing situation is due to the high demand and limited space, that's not entirely true. The reality is that Hong Kong could build more housing and reduce the price, as only a quarter of its territory is built up and just 7% is zoned for residential development. However, the city has chosen not to do this. We need to delve into Hong Kong's history. Hong Kong was just a small, insignificant fishing village on the outskirts of China. Even when Britain took it over and it started to grow, it didn't seem like it would become anything significant. But then, after World War II, the British colonial government made a bold decision that shaped Hong Kong's destiny, creating both its strengths and weaknesses. The government chose to follow a policy known as positive non-interventionism, essentially the purest form of capitalism. The belief was that government rules and interference are what slow down the economy, so the only thing the government needed to do was step aside. Hong Kong did just that, having no tariffs, no minimum wage, no official pension system, no competition law, no social welfare system, and most importantly, very low taxes until the late 20th century. There was a significant issue with this approach. Normally, countries rely on taxes for income, and without taxes, the colonial government needed to find another income source. So they decided to lease out the land, which belonged to the government, to real estate developers. These leases became Hong Kong's primary income source. But for these leases to bring in enough money, they had to be expensive. The government managed to keep them costly by limiting their supply. In other words, the government had an incentive to keep housing pricey because the pricier it was, the more money it made. Therefore, it only leased a small portion of the available land for property construction. This system worked well for real estate developers too, as they knew they could sell whatever they built at any price due to the limited supply and lack of competition. But this resulted in limited and unaffordable housing for the average people. The non-interventionism policy also led to other undesirable outcomes. Despite its high GDP in 2020, around 23% of Hong Kong's population, or about 1.6 million people, lived below the poverty line. This rate is higher than in almost any other Asian country. The situation was even more severe among those over 65, with over 40% living below the poverty line in 2020, leading to elderly people resorting to scavenging cardboard. There are older people in Hong Kong, often referred to as cardboard grandmas, who go around the city collecting cardboard boxes. They sell these boxes to recycling centers, earning a small amount of money. This is usually the only work they can find. Over time, their situation hasn't improved, but has gotten worse. Since the 1980s, the rate of poverty has nearly doubled. You might wonder why this is happening in one of the world's wealthiest cities, where unemployment is low and the economy is growing. The answer is that while Hong Kong is indeed one of the richest cities, its wealth is distributed very unevenly. This didn't just happen by chance. Hong Kong's development happened in two different waves. In the 1950s, it grew thanks to industrialization, particularly through textile manufacturing. This was helped by low taxes, easy export rules, and inexpensive labor from millions of immigrants from China. These immigrants needed jobs, and the textile manufacturers needed workers. As a result, Hong Kong prospered. But things changed in the late 1970s when China got a new leader after Chairman Mao. This leader announced a new direction for China, which had been isolated for a long time, and this brought about an economic transformation. This change was a great opportunity for Hong Kong. Because it was part of the UK, had low taxes, English as an official language, and a capitalist culture, it was the perfect bridge to China for Western companies looking to invest there. This change completely transformed Hong Kong's economy. Manufacturing began to fade, and local businesses started focusing more on providing financial and commercial services. While these new sectors offered higher value and better pay for those who worked in them, they also offered fewer jobs. People who had worked in factories and were now unable to get the high-paying, high-skilled jobs in finance were left behind. They were forced to find low-paying service jobs with no chance of ever moving up or earning a decent salary, all while living in the world's most expensive city. The government hasn't been too keen to help these people either. The principles of non-interventionism and belief in small government have continued in Hong Kong even after it was handed back to China in 1997. The government sees itself as an institution that should help to create wealth, but not to redistribute it and promote individual responsibility. It has been hesitant to get too involved in the situation. The problem with this is that, despite Hong Kong being known as a place of entrepreneurship, the business landscape in Hong Kong is far from even. Most of Hong Kong's economy is controlled by a small number of family clans that have held a tight grip over it since the colonial era. These families own and operate large conglomerates that have established monopolies in all the most important industries like shipping, construction, real estate, or utilities. They are the ones who benefit the most from Hong Kong's system, and they have so much influence that starting a business that could compete with them is nearly impossible. So, despite what people might say, starting a business in Hong Kong is not as simple as it seems. At the same time, Hong Kong's status as Asia's main financial center is slipping away. Since the Chinese government has abandoned the principle of one country, two systems, and has been tightening its control over the city and taking away the freedoms that Hong Kong citizens used to have, Hong Kong's value to foreign investors has been decreasing along with its autonomy. Soon, Hong Kong might just become another Chinese city, with only its skyscrapers, cage homes, and cardboard grandmas as reminders of its former glory. If you liked our content, please hit the like button and consider subscribing to stay tuned for more information.